This is Democracy Watch. So, Mark, Elon Musk is funding a PAC called America PAC that's purporting to register you to vote. But if you live in a swing state, the website merely gathers your information and, in fact, offers no avenue to register to vote. But you've just handed over pertinent data that America PAC is now using in conjunction with the Trump campaign. Is this legal?
So, look, I think that there are real questions about it, which is why, I know we're going to talk about the investigations that are going on here. It raises a number of questions. The first is, are people being defrauded out of providing information that they otherwise wouldn't have provided, right? I provided information because I thought it was going to register to vote. And in fact, instead, my information was just taken for some other reason. But it raises a second problem, Brian, which is, are people being essentially defrauded out of registering to vote, right? Like the first is did they give information they wouldn't have given? But the second is people may think I gave this information and I think I am registered to vote because I thought that's what was going to happen here. And then they show up at the polls and in fact, they're not registered to vote. So this is a terrible idea. Whether it violates state criminal law or state civil law, we're going to find out. But it is certainly, for anyone who cares about free and fair elections and cares about fair play and democracy, boy, this is a terrible idea.
Well, to that point then, forget the fraud in terms of collecting information that people think is going to be for registering to vote. What happens, for example, do they have legal exposure, America PAC, do they have legal exposure if a voter goes to the polls thinking that they were registered because they used this website and in fact they weren't registered, all they did was get tricked into giving over personal information?
Right. And particularly, what if that's the case and this was by design? One of the things that I think some of the press accounts suggested is that actually there is different treatment depending on what state you're in. So maybe some places they are registering you to vote and in other places they are.
I think that's exactly right. I think that so long as you didn't live in a swing state, you got funneled into the correct voter registration organization. But if you lived in a battleground state, then you were just basically handing over personal data.
Right. And if you assume, and this is an assumption, but if you assume that the people who are being targeted for voter registration are typically younger, first-time voters, maybe minority voters, right? These are people who are not already registered. Is that decision by this PAC to steer people who are registering to vote in swing states and not have them registered? Is this, in fact, a intentional effort to take out of the electorate pools of voters who maybe would vote for a Kamala Harris or for Democrats rather than Republicans? And then you start to get into intent, right? It is not just like a dumb idea, a bad idea, but it is actually intending to defraud certain kinds of voters and shape the electorate a certain kind of way. And I think that very much ups the ante.
Now, a few different states have begun investigations into this activity. What specifically are they looking for, and what possible statutes might apply here?
Yeah, so I suspect what they are looking for is along the lines of what I just suggested, which is this, are the voters being lied to, right? That's sort of one element of fraud. The second, though, is were they intentionally being lied to? In other words, it's one thing if they got bad information, this was a boneheaded plan and, but the voters were not misled. It's another thing if they were misled. It is yet another level, though, if they were intentionally misled. If they were being misled because the effort here is to steer potential Democratic voters or progressive voters out of the system, and therefore affect the outcome of the election. And depending on where it is, which, if any of those it is, it would implicate different kinds of laws, right? It could implicate a consumer protection statute. It could implicate a statute that protects personal identifying information, or it could implicate these much, much more serious statutes that deal with, dirty tricks and criminal fraud. And we've seen criminal prosecutions in other contexts where that has been the case.
Just as a quick aside, for those watching right now, Marc has been on this beat of making sure that scam, everything from scam packs to voter suppression tactics are put on full display. So if you want to support the work that he and his team are doing, please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet he founded to focus on everything voting elections. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. This is the single most important time right now to be supporting the work that Marc and his team are doing. So go ahead and make sure to sign up. Marc, one CNBC reporter did report that Jocelyn Benson's office in Michigan, she's Secretary of State, is launching an investigation. And in the aftermath of that announcement, the PAC, America PAC, since removed some buttons on its homepage that purported to allow you to request a ballot and register to vote. Is there some tacit admission of guilt there by virtue of removing these buttons after the scam here became public?
Look, I think that it is an admission or an acknowledgement, maybe not an admission. It is an acknowledgement that this probably was not, like I said, at a minimum, the best idea they ever had, and perhaps worse. But it is definitely, if they had thought this through and they were like, you know what, we've lawyered this, we've looked at this, this withstands the public scrutiny, this withstands legal scrutiny, then presumably they would be going full steam ahead. But it appears that once, this was called out into the open, this all of a sudden there were changes made. And I think, Brian, don't sell yourself short. Yes, it is potentially because the authorities are looking at this. Jocelyn Benson's office are looking at it. But oftentimes with these activities, these things happen under a radar. And it is when there is a broad shining of the light on it that oftentimes you see these folks scurry away. So it's possible it's the one, but it's also possible due to the good work that you and others in the media have done.
Well, Elon has been pretty outspoken in purporting to be against election interference. Is this in and of itself a form of election interference?
Look, if they are telling people, give us your personal information and you will be registered to vote, and then they don't register to vote, it's hard to say that is anything other than election interference. If they are collecting personal identifying information and then they are passing that on in some form or fashion to a campaign, again, not saying that they are, don't have proof that they are, but if that's what's happening, there's a question, what the hell is happening to this information? Why are they collecting it, right? Why most websites don't want, and this, you typically don't want to have more personal identifying information than necessary because there's legal liability to storing it. But if they are doing something with it that is untoward towards affecting the election, yeah, it's hard to say that wouldn't be election interference. So look, we're going to find out what exactly was at the bottom of this, I suspect, because there will probably be other press interest that may expose it, or because whether it's in Michigan or elsewhere, someone will want to get to the bottom of this.
Well, and you just alluded to this, but how important is the collection of this kind of data to a presidential campaign? Like what kind of an impact could this venture by Elon and the other funders of this PAC actually have?
Look, detailed information about voters is gold in politics, right? Campaigns spend an enormous sum of money to try to learn about their voters, who they are, what motivates them, where they live, whether they're registered, why they haven't registered, what messages may motivate them to register and vote. So this is very, very valuable data that both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party collect. We know that in 2016, there were a lot of efforts among Steve Bannon and other people associated with the Trump campaign or in the Trump orbit, to try to collect and analyze this kinds of data. Remember, there was a big scandal involving Facebook and whether they were sharing certain kinds of data. So right. We live in a data-driven world, and that is no different in politics than anything else. Again, I don't know that any of this data is going to the Trump campaign or the Republican Party. Maybe it's just dead ending in this PAC, but certainly political campaigns have a lot of interest in this kind of information.
Well, the Trump campaign has been bragging about shifting their ground game to outside groups exactly like this PAC, like America PAC. But in the wake of what we're seeing right now, it suggests that maybe some of these groups aren't up to the task and may even face legal liability themselves. Did the Trump campaign, in your opinion, make a mistake with this strategy?
Look, ask Jeb Bush and Ron DeSantis how well it is when you outsource your get out the vote and field efforts to a super PAC. This is the irony of it, is that it is actually Republicans who have learned the lesson that this doesn't work. Nobody shows up to volunteer for a super PAC. No one gets excited and says, you know what, I want to go to a super PAC rally, right?
Yeah.
The lifeblood of campaigns when it comes to voter contact are the candidates and the campaigns themselves. And so Donald Trump's decision to outsource this to third-party organizations tells us two things about them. But I think we need to, Brian, listen carefully to the two. The first is that it's a mistake. Okay, and that I think we can hold them up to ridicule and scorn. It's a grift, it's whatever else. But the second, Brian, and you and I have talked about this on other episodes, is what does Donald Trump know, or what does he think he knows about what other weapons he has available to him that he doesn't think he needs to motivate people to vote? You know, this is a guy who said you don't need to vote in 4 years. He's also said we have enough votes this time. He is someone who has courted election deniers and tried to infiltrate election offices. So, you know, yeah, I think there is one part of it which is, you know, incompetence and stupidity and bravado, but it also gives me pause that maybe, just maybe, they want some of this information in the outside group world because they think they'll do the dirty work with it, and also because they think that the RNC and the Trump campaign have other tools to try to win this election that are not about turning out voters.
And all of which underscores, again, the work that you're doing over at your firm. So for those watching right now, to support Marc and his team, please, again, make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and in the post description of this video at the end of the video. But just a quick note first, and that is a big congratulations to you, Marc, for we've reached 100 million views on this series for Democracy Watch. You've done 165 episodes thus far, but reached 100 million people so far. So I know I speak for everybody in the audience in saying thank you for not only the wealth of, you know, knowledge and valuable information that you've given us and made us smarter by doing so, but also for the work that you're doing in the courts, in Ground Zero, and making sure to fight to defend democracy here.
Yeah, and Brian, I just got to say, 100 million views. I mean, you know, sure, for you, you know, you're a big mocker in this field. Like, that's not a big thing. But 100 million views, I want to thank you for, you know, approaching me to begin with your confidence that you would take a lawyer. And, you know, Bill, when you first said, you know, we're going to do this YouTube thing, I'm thinking, who the hell is going to want to watch a lawyer? 100 million views. And you made this possible. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank your team. You know, the editors, I could call some of them out by name, but I won't embarrass them. You know, they do a great job with this series, and I look forward to the next 100 million views.
That's right. Well, and again, on behalf of both of us, thank you to everybody watching right now, because you're what makes this series so successful. And again, for those watching, to support the work we do, you can sign up for Democracy Docket. The link is right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Taylor Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.